A man does not need to ignore the truth to avoid it. Sometimes he only needs to notice it and do nothing. There's a specific moment, and most men won't name it out loud. But you know which one, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you came here looking for reassurance, this is the wrong episode. This one isn't for men who need encouragement. It's for men who already know and haven't moved. This episode isn't about what you don't know. It's about what happens in the moment after you know. The moment where a man either moves or quietly protects the version of himself that doesn't have to. This is Iron Suits, where strength wears a crown. I am Marwan. There's a hotel room somewhere in the last 6 months. Could be last week, could be 3 months ago. Early morning, pre-meeting. The kind of morning where the day hasn't started demanding things yet. You're in the bathroom. The light in those rooms, you know it. No softness, no angles working in your favor, just fluorescent and honest. And you're standing there, not for long, 30 seconds maybe, 40. But in those 30 seconds, something registered. Not a crisis, not a breakdown, nothing like that. Just a quiet, clear read of the gap between what's in that mirror, and the standard you hold without question in every other part of your life. You stood there, you felt it, and then you made a small adjustment. The shirt, the waistband, something automatic. Something you've done enough times that it doesn't feel like a decision anymore. You pull the shirt down, you adjust, you do the thing you do every morning now without naming what it is. The adjustment isn't grooming, it's negotiation. And the body keeps the receipt. You took one more look. Not a long one, just enough to confirm that presentation was acceptable. The gap isn't visible to anyone who wasn't looking for it. And that's the other thing. You become very good at knowing what's visible and what isn't. Which shirt, which jacket, which angle in a room. Small calibrations that have become so routine, you don't even run them consciously anymore. They just happen. Automatic infrastructure. That's not vanity. That's a man managing evidence. And the management has become seamless enough that you don't experience it as management anymore. You experience it as getting dressed. But there's a version of you, the one who stood in that bathroom 30 seconds earlier, who knows exactly what it is. He just doesn't get a vote once the shirt is on and the day has started. Then you walked out, went to the meeting, performed exactly as expected. Closed what needed closing, said the right things, read the room the way you always do. And somewhere underneath all of it, that bathroom moment was still there. Filed, not gone, filed. That's the moment we're talking about. That's where this episode lives. Here's what most men do in that moment. They file it, not ignore it, file it. There's a difference. Ignoring is unconscious. Filing is a decision. You acknowledge it, you noted it, You labeled it, thought, I'll deal with this, then moved on. Because there were things that actually needed your attention. You felt responsible. It was responsible. And that's exactly why it worked. I've known for a while. And then comes the realization. Or rather, then comes the rationalization. I just haven't had the right window. Here's the thing about filing. It feels like responsibility, like a man who has his priorities right. Urgent things first, this later. But later has a habit of becoming a location that doesn't exist on any calendar you actually see. You've been finding this for a while now, and the file doesn't get smaller. It just gets quieter. That's what you've been living with. Not ignorance, not confusion, a very quiet, organized avoidance. And the organization of it, that's what makes it comfortable. Because disorganized avoidance feels like a problem. Organized avoidance feels like a system. And you're very good at building systems. Let me give you the doctrine line for this episode. Everything else orbits it. Awareness isn't progress. It's where intelligent men hide. Hold that. Because that's not a provocation. That's an audit result. You're not a man who misses things. That's not the issue here. You catch things early in business. You read signals most people don't even register. That pattern recognition, that's one of the things that made you who you are. But in here, in this specific area, the same intelligence that catches everything files it. You see the problem, you isolate it, you understand exactly what it is, and then you let the understanding sit where the action should be. In business, you see a problem, you close it. That's the operating pattern. In here, you see a problem, you note it, and you let the noting feel like movement. That's the variance right there. If someone on your team did that, saw a performance gap, understood it clearly, documented it accurately, and then produced the same results in the following quarter, you would not accept that. You know that. And you know that, which is the part that's been sitting quietly underneath everything else. Back to the hotel room, because I want to stay in a little longer. You adjusted something before you left. A shirt, a waistband, a small thing, automatic. You do it most mornings now. Not because you decided to, because at some point it became the routine. Small negotiations with the mirror before the day starts. A darker suit than you might have chosen 5 years ago. A jacket that works harder than it used to. Little calibrations, each one small enough to be invisible on its own. Most men would not even notice they're avoiding it. You notice. You just don't say anything about it. Yeah, that adjustment is a receipt. Every time it happens, the body logs it. Not as punishment, not as failure, as evidence. The body is just reporting back accurately, without bias, without editorial. Here's what happened. Here's what happened. Here's the frequency. Here's the direction of travel. And you've been disputing the report. Not loudly, quietly. With language like, I've been traveling. The quarter was heavy. I know what I needed to do. I just haven't had the window. That's not a rebuttal. That's a delay. And here's what the internal monologue sounds like. The one that runs underneath everything else. You know the one. I know what to do. I've done it before. When the quarter settles, after this deal closes, I just need a proper window. It's not like I've forgotten. I could fix this if I wanted to, if I decided to. That's not a plan. That's a waiting room. And the waiting room has been open for how long now? Don't answer it out loud. Just let the number sit. It's not that bad. I'm still performing. Here's the part you won't like. That line, I'm still performing, is the most dangerous sentence a man like you can run. Because it's true. You're still performing professionally, financially, socially, but in the room, and nobody in the room is questioning you. Right? Nobody at the table sees a gap. Nobody who works with you has any idea. And that continued performance has become the evidence you use against yourself. See, it's not affecting anything. I'm still sharp, still closing, still the same. But here's what you're not saying out loud. Performance at your level is insulated. It's protected by momentum, by reputation, by infrastructure you built years before any of this started. You're not performing because everything is fine. You're performing despite one standard, one specific standard that you quietly dropped below what you'd accept anywhere else. And that distinction matters more than you've been letting. And that distinction matters more than you've been letting it. Because one of those is a man operating at his ceiling. The other is a man spending an inheritance, slowly, without drama, without anyone noticing, including himself. Here's where the language becomes a disguise. Reasonable, temporary, prioritized, pending. That's a vocabulary of a man reaches for when he's lowered a standard and doesn't want to call it that. Fucking call it what it is. The standard dropped. It didn't pause. It didn't defer to a better quarter. It dropped. And reasonable language is what made it feel acceptable every single time. The body isn't a future project. Let me be precise about that. The body is the receipt, the audit trail. Every late night that became the norm, not the exception. Every client dinner that became the pattern. Every morning plan that got rescheduled. Then quietly removed from the schedule entirely. Each one left a mark, not as punishment, as evidence. The body records what gets repeated. It doesn't care what you understand. It doesn't update because you have clarity. It doesn't give credit for intention. It reports behavior. What happened, how often, over how long. And the report has been accurate. You've been disputing it. There's a photograph somewhere. Not recent, maybe 2 years back, maybe 3. You look different. Not dramatically different, but differently in the way that registers when you see it now. You can see the gap in a way you couldn't when the photo was taken. Now, a photograph exists, and when you see it, when it comes up on your phone unexpectedly, or someone tags something old, there's a version of that bathroom moment, a quiet, a gap recognition, a half second where something doesn't match. And then you close the photo. Not dramatically, you just move on. Because there's nothing to do with it in that moment. Because the moment passes. Because the file already has a category for this. You're good at moving on. That's part of what makes you effective. It's also part of what makes this particular problem so durable. That loop, that's what we need to name. Because it isn't random, it isn't weakness, it isn't a character flaw, it is a system. And systems can be read, signaled. Something registers, mirror, photograph, shirt, waistband, a comment from someone that lands differently than it was probably meant. Discomfort, you feel the gap, the incongruence between this and everything else you hold to a standard without question. Explanation, you generate a coherent, intelligent reason. Busy quarter, travel schedule, priorities correctly ordered, all true or defensible. Relief, the explanation discharges the discomfort. Pressure drops. You feel like a man who understands his situation, even if it isn't resolved yet. Delay, no decision made, no line drawn, the file goes back in the drawer. Repeat, that's not chaos, that's an operating system, and it runs on intelligence. The smarter the man, the better the explanation. The better the explanation, the deeper the relief. The deeper the relief, the longer the delay. You didn't build this system on purpose, but you've been maintaining it. Every time you chose the explanation over the decision, you maintained it. I've let it go further than I intended. Back to the hotel room, third time. Because I want you to look at it differently now. Standing in that bathroom at 6 a.m., that wasn't a failure moment. That was a clarity moment. The problem isn't that you saw it. The problem is what happened next. You saw it clearly, completely, without filters. And then, excuse me. And then you used the seeing as substitute for the deciding. Awareness isn't progress, it's where intelligent men hide. That's a doctrine, and that's exactly what happened in that bathroom. You processed it, you filed it, you labeled it, known problem, pending resolution, and you walked out feeling not great, but somehow discharged, like the seeing had moved something. It hadn't. The gap was the same size when you left that room as it was when you walked in. The one thing that changed was the pressure. And the pressure dropped because the awareness discharged it. That's a trap. And it was built for men exactly like you. Men too intelligent to ignore the problem and too comfortable with the filing system to close it. What standard are you actually operating under here? Not the one you claim, the one your behavior keeps proving, because your behavior is the only honest answer to that question. Not what you say when someone asks, not what you tell yourself at 6 a.m. before the meeting, what the mirror reports, what the waistband tells you, what the photograph shows when you don't have time to prepare for it. That's a standard in operation. Let that sit. You wouldn't tolerate this variance anywhere else. That's the inversion that cuts the deepest. A business running with a 2-year performance gap, where the problem is visible, understood, well documented, and pending resolution, that business doesn't exist under your name. You would have closed it 12 months ago, probably, maybe sooner. You wouldn't have isolated the variable, assigned accountability, and produced a different result. But in here, you have extended the patience to yourself that you would not extend to any other person, any process, or any metric under your command. And the patience isn't patience. That's what it needs to be called. It's an exemption. One you issued quietly, without a formal decision, without saying it out loud, without even fully registering it at the time. One place, one standard, one exemption. And it's been running long enough that it has a shape now. I keep thinking I'm closer to fixing this than I actually am. You saw it in the hotel room. You've been seeing it in the photograph. You felt it in the small daily adjustment that stopped feeling like adjustments even, because they became routine. You've run the loop, signal, discomfort, explanation, relief, delay. You know the system now. Awareness isn't progress, it's where intelligent men hide. That line has been true for you for longer than this episode. You know that. The hotel room didn't create the problem, it removed the last excuse. So now the standard either applies here or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, stop calling it a standard. Your body is telling you the truth your title is trying to hide. And deep down, you already know where the gap is. This is Iron Suits, where strength wears a crown. If you know another man who's been negotiating with the mirror instead of leading it, send him this episode. And if you're done explaining the standard away, subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.